Strait of Hormuz, April 2024. Local time 0347. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower carrier strike group was advancing through international waters. Speed 18 knots. Formation standard defensive posture. Distance to Iranian coastline 22 nautical miles. On the flight deck, 4,700 sailors were preparing for dawn operations. FA-18 Super Hornets had been lined up for launch. Fuel lines had been connected. Weapons had been loaded. Pilots were performing final checks. In the Combat Information Center, radar operators were tracking 47 surface contacts. Standard traffic for the strait. Fishing vessels, cargo ships, Iranian patrol boats, staying at a distance. Everything appeared routine. However, 85 kilometers to the northeast, inside Iranian airspace, something else was happening. At Bandar Abbas Air Base, 12 Su-24 Fencer bombers were waiting on the runway. Engines were warming up. Pilots had fastened their belts. Each aircraft was carrying 4 Kh-31 anti-ship missiles. Range, 60 kilometers. Speed, Mach 3. The plan had been calculated. The timing had been precisely determined. Iran had been watching the Eisenhower for 6 days, tracking its habits, mapping escort positions, identifying gaps in the defensive perimeter. They had deliberately prepared this moment. Before dawn, shift change time, minimum air control. It was the ship's most vulnerable moment in the 24-hour cycle. Iranian command believed there were 8 minutes from launch to impact. 8 minutes for America to react. 8 minutes to deliver a message that would reshape Middle Eastern power dynamics. They believed in surprise, in speed. They were counting on overwhelming the defensive systems with volume. What they didn't account for was integration. The Iranian operation had been planned by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps naval force, not by the regular Iranian Navy. The IRGC had a different doctrine, more aggressive, more willing to take risks. Their commander, Rear Admiral Alireza Tangsiri, had been advocating asymmetric strikes against US naval assets for months. He believed conventional deterrence had failed. He believed bold action was necessary. His staff had run simulations, had studied previous US naval engagements, had analyzed the 1988 Praying Mantis operation, when the US Navy destroyed Iranian platforms and ships. They concluded that modern anti-ship missiles, if launched in sufficient numbers, could overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. The mathematics seemed sound. 12 aircraft, 4 missiles each, 48 incoming threats. US cruisers typically carried 90 20 interceptor missiles, but they couldn't launch all of them simultaneously. The reload time between salvos was 8-12 seconds. Iranian planners calculated that at least 15-20 missiles would penetrate the defensive envelope. Even half of this number hitting the ship would cause catastrophic damage. The geopolitical timing also seemed optimal. Regional tensions were high. Nuclear negotiations had stalled. US attention was divided between Ukraine and the Pacific. Iran wanted to demonstrate capability, to prove that American naval superiority in the Gulf was an illusion, to change the strategic balance. The order was given at 0351. The first Su-24 launched from Bandar Abbas. 11 more followed within 90 seconds. The attack wave consisted of 48 missiles.
Staggered launch times, multiple approach vectors, classic saturation doctrine. Iranian planners estimated a 60% hit probability. Even conservative models suggested 12-15 impacts, enough to cripple the ship, enough to force evacuation, enough to change everything. The missiles climbed to 12,000 meters, turned southwest, accelerated to cruise speed, time to target 7 minutes 40 seconds. In the Eisenhower's Combat Information Center, the atmosphere changed at 035214. ANSPY-1 radar detected the launch signatures, automatically classified them as hostile. Threat assessment protocols activated within 1.3 seconds. The system that responded wasn't just technology. It was a doctrine refined over 13 years. After the USS Stark was hit by Iraqi Exocet missiles in 1987, killing 37 sailors, The US Navy completely redeveloped its defensive philosophy. No longer would individual ships operate independently. No longer would the human decision-making process cause fatal delays. The Aegis Combat System became the fundamental building block of this transformation. But Aegis wasn't just radar and computers. It was a networked battle management system that treated the entire carrier strike group as a China defensive organism. Every radar return from every ship was instantly reported. Every weapons system could be monitored from any platform. Every threat was assigned to the optimal interceptor, regardless of which ship fired it. The Aegis Combat System didn't wait for human confirmation. It had already calculated trajectories, had determined optimal intercept points, had assigned defensive assets. 2 Ticonderoga-class cruisers, USS Philippine Sea and USS Vela Gulf, had been positioned 18 kilometers away on the port and starboard sides of the ship. Each carried 120 vertical launch cells. Each cell was loaded with SM-2 or SM-6 interceptor missiles. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Gravely formed the forward picket 25 kilometers ahead of the ship. Its SPY-1D radar had detected the Iranian launches simultaneously with the cruisers. The system made its first decision at 035T216. Launch authorization transmitted. VLS cells opened. SM-6 missiles ignited. The first interceptor was airborne 2.8 seconds after initial detection. Commander Sarah Mitchell was the tactical action officer aboard the Philippine Sea. She watched the displays light up with threat tracks, watched the automated engagement sequence initiate. Her role wasn't to stop the system, only to monitor and override if necessary. She saw the missile assignments appear on her screen. Target 1 assigned to Philippine Sea, VLS Cell 47. Target 2 assigned to Vela Gulf, Cell 63. Target 3 assigned to Gravely, Cell 12. The system had calculated optimal firing solutions for all 48 threats in less than 2 seconds. Mitchell had trained for this scenario dozens of times, in simulators, in live fire exercises off the California coast. But this was different. This was real. She keyed her headset. Weapons free. Engage all tracks. Acknowledgement came from 3 ships simultaneously. Philippine Sea engaging. Vela Gulf engaging. Gravely engaging. By 035T245, 16 SM-6s were in flight. Each had locked onto separate targets. Each was being guided by networked radar data from 3 different ships. This wasn't individual ship defense. This was integrated air warfare. The SM-6 was the most advanced interceptor in the US arsenal. Unlike earlier missiles that required continuous radar illumination from the launching ship, the SM-6 had active radar homing. It could guide itself to the target using its own seeker. This meant ships could fire and immediately focus on the next threat. No need to maintain no vulnerability window. Each SM-6 cost $4.3 million. Each carried a 64-kilogram blast fragmentation warhead. Each could intercept targets at altitudes up to 33 kilometers and ranges exceeding 40 kilometers. The Iranian missiles were traveling at Mach 3, rapidly closing distance, but they were following predictable ballistic trajectories. No evasive maneuvers, no terrain masking. They had been designed to overwhelm Cold War-era defenses, point defense systems, limited engagement zones, but they weren't facing Cold War system. At 035T4030, the first intercept occurred at 52 kilometers range. The SM-6 didn't use proximity fuses. It used hit-to-kill technology, direct collision. Kinetic energy alone was sufficient to destroy the target. The closing velocity was Mach 7. The combined speed of interceptor and target. The collision released energy equivalent to a small bomb. Missile fragments scattered across 400 square meters of airspace. Target destroyed. 3.4 seconds later, the second intercept, then the third, then the fourth. The Aegis system was processing engagement data in real time, adjusting subsequent launches based on observed results, learning, adapting. One SM-6 missed its target due to a tracking error. The system immediately assigned a backup interceptor, launched it 4.2 seconds later. The backup killed the target at 38 kilometers range. By 035T50, 11 Iranian missiles had been destroyed, but 37 were still coming. The defensive plan had always anticipated leakers. No system was 100% effective. The outer layer had been designed to thin the attack. The middle layer would handle survivors. The second defensive layer activated at 035T512. RIM-62 evolved Sea Sparrow missiles launched directly from the Eisenhower, shorter range, higher maneuverability, designed for leakers targets that penetrated the outer defense. The SSM was different from the SM-6, smaller, faster acceleration, optimized for terminal phase intercepts. Each ESSM could pull 50G maneuvers, could track and engage highly evasive targets, could operate seamlessly in the dense electromagnetic environment close to the ship. 12 ESSM interceptors fired within 18 seconds. Each engaged multiple targets using semi-active radar homing. Point defense doctrine. Close-range kills. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was the SSM battery commander. He watched his missiles leave the launcher, observed the tracking data stream across his display. Bird 1, tracking. Bird 2 tracking. Bird 3 tracking. The missiles accelerated toward Mach 4 within 6 seconds. Their rocket motors burned bright orange against the pre-dawn sky. At 035T608, the engagement zone contracted to 15 kilometers. 21 Iranian missiles remained, still approaching, still threatening. The final layer was different. Phalanx close-in weapon systems, 6-barrel 20mm rotary cannons, rate of fire 4,500 rounds per minute, autonomous targeting, computer-controlled tracking. The Phalanx was the last line of defense, designed for targets that had penetrated everything else, designed to destroy threats seconds before impact. Range 3.5 kilometers. Each ship in the strike group had multiple Phalanx mounts. The Eisenhower had 3, the cruisers had 2 each, the destroyer had 1. The system operated autonomously, no human input needed. The computer tracked incoming threats, calculated intercept solutions, and fired automatically. At 035T644, the first Phalanx system locked onto an incoming missile. The radar detected the target at 5 kilometers, calculated its trajectory, predicted the intercept point. The cannon rotated, elevated, fired. The sound was distinctive, a mechanical scream, like tearing metal, depleted uranium rounds leaving the barrel at 1,100 meters per second. Each round had been designed to fragment on impact, creating a shrapnel cloud in the missile's path. The Iranian missile flew directly into that cloud. The warhead detonated. The explosion was visible from the ship's deck. A bright flash 2.1 kilometers away. Debris rained into the ocean. Phalanx systems aboard all 3 escort ships engaged simultaneously. The defensive fire created a cone of destruction. Thousands of rounds, overlapping coverage, no gaps. The sky lit up with tracer rounds, glowing lines connecting the ships to their targets. The sound continued constantly, overlapping bursts from multiple cannon. At 035T729, the last Iranian missile was destroyed 1.8 kilometers from the Eisenhower. Total engagement time 5 minutes 15 seconds. Iranian missiles fired 48. US missiles expended 42. Phalanx rounds fired 6. Iranian missiles that reached their target 0. On the Eisenhower's flight deck, sailors continued pre-flight operations. Most were unaware of what had just happened. The defensive engagement had occurred beyond visual range. No explosions near the ship, no alarms, no panic. One sailor, aviation boatswain's mate, second-class Tyler Rodriguez, had seen the Phalanx turrets rotating, while refueling an FFA-18, had heard the distinctive sound of the cannons firing. He looked up, saw the flashes in the distance. What was that? He asked his chief. The chief looked at the explosions, then at Rodriguez. Training exercise, get back to work. Rodriguez knew better, but he didn't ask again. The ship continued its transit, course unchanged, speed unchanged. In Bandar Abbas, Iranian command watched the radar returns disappear, one by one, systematically, completely. Rear Admiral Tangsiri was standing in the operations center, staring at the display, watching his attack disintegrate. He had expected chaos, had expected damage, had expected victory. Instead he witnessed complete failure. His deputy approached. "Sir, all missiles have been intercepted." Tangsiri didn't respond. "Should we launch the second wave?" There was no second wave. This was the attack. Everything Iran had prepared. Everything they had committed. "No," Tangsiri said quietly. The room was silent. The attack had been based on a fundamental miscalculation. Iranian planners had assumed the US Navy still operated on Cold War doctrine. Individual ships defending themselves, limited coordination, sequential engagements, but the US had labored for 30 years to integrate its system. The transformation was gradual, but detailed. After the Gulf War demonstrated the power of networked forces, the Navy invested billions of dollars in data link systems, cooperative engagement capability, naval integrated fire control. These weren't just communication systems, they were battle networks that transformed separate platforms into a unified force. The result was something Iran hadn't anticipated. The carrier strike group didn't defend itself as 5 separate ships. It defended as a single integrated system, with multiple firing positions. At 0415, the Eisenhower launched 8 FFA-18 Super Hornets, not for retaliation, to intimidate. The aircraft established combat air patrol over the strait, radar emissions active, weapons armed, message clear. Iranian air defenses tracked them but didn't engage. The pilots continued their patrol for 90 minutes, drew racetrack patterns, demonstrated control of the airspace. By Euro 445 the Su-24s had returned to Bandar Abbas. Pilots were debriefed, mission logs were analyzed. The official Iranian statement released 6 hours later didn't speak about the attack at all. Instead it mentioned routine air defense exercises in sovereign airspace. The Fifth Fleet issued a brief statement. USS Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group continues freedom of navigation operations in international waters. All personnel safe. No damage to any vessels. 17 words. No details. No accusations. Because the response wasn't verbal. The response was operational. The Eisenhower didn't withdraw, didn't change course, didn't reduce its presence. For 20 years, Iran's primary deterrent against US naval power had been anti-ship missiles. The threat of saturation attack, the promise of heavy casualties. This deterrent had now been compromised. The Eisenhower remained in the Gulf for another 90 days. 682 flight operations were conducted. It transited the Strait of Hormuz 14 times. No further attacks occurred. Iran had tested the limits of American naval power and discovered there were no limits, only consequences.